My brother stole my business idea, so I sued and won his shares. I was 28 when I came up with the idea that would change everything. After months of sleepless nights, I had developed a mobile app concept that could revolutionize how people manage their daily routines. The app would use smart algorithms to optimize schedules, remind users of important tasks, and even suggest productivity improvements based on their behavior patterns. I spent weeks sketching wireframes, researching the market, and writing detailed business plans. Every evening after work, I would sit in my cramped apartment kitchen, surrounded by notebooks filled with ideas and technical specifications. The excitement was overwhelming because I knew this could be my ticket to financial freedom. The inspiration for the app came from my own chaotic life. I was juggling a demanding day job, freelance projects on weekends, and trying to maintain some semblance of a social life. My schedule was a disaster, and I constantly forgot important appointments, missed deadlines, and felt like I was drowning in my own disorganization. Existing productivity apps were either too simple or overly complicated, and none of them seemed to understand the real challenges that busy people face. I realized that what the world needed was an intelligent assistant that could learn from user behavior and adapt to their specific needs and preferences. I spent countless hours researching the competition, analyzing market trends, and identifying gaps in the current productivity software landscape. I created detailed user personas, mapped out customer journeys, and developed a comprehensive monetization strategy. The technical requirements were complex, involving machine learning algorithms, cloud synchronization, and cross-platform compatibility. I knew that I would need help with the programming aspects, but I was confident that my vision and business acumen would be the driving force behind the project's success. My younger brother had always been the golden child in our family. While I struggled through college and worked multiple jobs to pay rent, he seemed to coast through life effortlessly. He had this natural charm that made people gravitate toward him, and our parents constantly praised his achievements. Despite our different personalities, we had maintained a close relationship throughout our adult lives. He would often come to me for advice about relationships and career decisions, and I valued his perspective on technical matters. When I shared my app idea with him during a family dinner, his eyes lit up with genuine interest. The family dinner was at our parents' house, and I had been hesitant to share my idea with everyone present. Our mother was always worried about me taking risks, and our father tended to be overly critical of new business ventures. But the excitement was too much to contain, and I found myself explaining the concept in detail. My brother asked thoughtful questions about the user interface, the technical architecture, and the potential market size. He seemed genuinely impressed by the thoroughness of my research and the innovation of the concept. Our parents were cautiously optimistic, but my brother's enthusiasm gave me the confidence boost I needed to move forward with the project. He offered to help with the technical aspects since he had some coding experience from his computer science degree. I was thrilled to have his support because working alone on such a massive project felt overwhelming. We agreed to meet regularly to discuss the project's progress and divide the workload based on our respective strengths. I would handle the business strategy, market research, user interface design, and investor relations, while he would focus on the technical implementation, coding, and system architecture. The partnership felt natural, and I was grateful to have someone who understood my vision and shared my excitement about the potential success. We spent the next few months collaborating intensively on the project. He would come over to my apartment 3 times a week, and we would work late into the night refining the concept. My living room became our unofficial headquarters, with whiteboards covered in flowcharts, sticky notes everywhere, and multiple laptops spread across every available surface. We ordered pizza almost every night and survived on coffee and energy drinks. The energy was infectious, and I felt like we were building something truly revolutionary. He brought valuable technical insights that helped refine the user experience, and I provided the business framework that would make the app commercially viable. During our collaboration, I handled all the administrative tasks related to establishing the business. I researched different business structures, consulted with accountants about tax implications, and filed all the necessary paperwork with state and federal agencies. We registered the business together, with both our names on the paperwork as co-founders. I trusted him completely because he was family, and the thought of protecting myself legally never crossed my mind. We had verbal agreements about equity distribution and responsibilities, but I never insisted on formal contracts or legal documentation. Everything seemed to be progressing perfectly until one morning, when I woke up to find my world turned upside down. My college roommate called me at 7 in the morning, his voice filled with confusion and concern. He had seen an article online about a revolutionary new productivity app that was launching next month. The description sounded eerily familiar, and when he clicked on the company website, he saw my brother's face prominently displayed as the founder and CEO. My stomach dropped as I frantically searched for the article myself. There it was, a detailed interview with my brother discussing his innovative app idea and his journey as an entrepreneur. He spoke about the months of research and development, the challenges of creating something truly unique, and his vision for the future of productivity technology. The article was published on a major tech blog and had already received hundreds of comments and social media shares. Industry experts were praising the innovative approach and predicting that the app would be a game changer in the productivity software market. My brother was quoted extensively, describing his creative process and the technical challenges he had overcome during development. Not once did he mention my involvement or contribution to the project. The website showed him as the sole founder, with a team of developers and marketing professionals who had apparently been working on the project for months. I felt like I was living in some kind of nightmare. I immediately called my brother, my hands shaking as I dialed his number. He answered on the third ring, his voice unusually cold and formal. When I confronted him about the article, he claimed that he had simply taken our collaborative work in a different direction. He argued that since he had done most of the technical implementation, he deserved to be recognized as the primary creator. The conversation quickly escalated into a heated argument, with him accusing me of being jealous of his success, and me pointing out that the entire concept had been my original idea. He insisted that ideas were worthless without execution, and that he had been the one to turn the concept into a viable product. The argument lasted for over an hour, with both of us saying things that we would later regret. He claimed that I had been holding the project back with my perfectionist tendencies, and that he had to move forward without me to meet investor deadlines. I reminded him of all the late nights I had spent developing the business plan, the market research I had conducted, and the user interface designs I had created. He dismissed my contributions as basic business activities that anyone could have done, while emphasizing the complexity of the technical work he had performed. The conversation ended with him hanging up on me, and when I tried calling back, he had already blocked my number. I spent the rest of that day in a state of shock and disbelief. I kept refreshing the tech blog article, reading the comments, and trying to process what had happened. Some of the commenters were already speculating about potential investment opportunities and praising my brother's innovative thinking. I felt betrayed, angry, and completely helpless. The idea that had consumed my thoughts for months and represented my path to financial freedom had been stolen by the person I trusted most. I realized that I had made a terrible mistake by not protecting myself legally from the beginning of our collaboration. The next few weeks were a blur of legal consultations and document gathering. I spent my savings on hiring an attorney who specialized in intellectual property disputes. My lawyer was a sharp woman in her 50s who had handled similar cases before. She reviewed all the evidence I had collected, including the original business plans, email exchanges, and registration documents. She explained that proving intellectual property theft could be challenging, especially when dealing with family members who had legitimate access to the information. However, she believed we had a strong case based on the timeline of events and the documented evidence of my original contributions. My attorney explained that intellectual property law is complex, and that the success of our case would depend on proving that I was the original creator of the concept and that my brother had misappropriated my work. She recommended that we gather as much evidence as possible to establish a clear timeline of the project's development. This included collecting all emails, text messages, and digital files related to the project, as well as identifying potential witnesses who could testify about my role in creating the original concept. The legal process would be lengthy and expensive, but she was confident we could achieve a favorable outcome if we built a strong case. I began the painstaking process of collecting evidence to support my claim. I printed out hundreds of emails, gathered all my handwritten notes and sketches, and compiled a comprehensive timeline of the project's development. I also reached out to friends and family members who had heard me discussing the app concept before my brother became involved. The evidence clearly showed that I had been working on the idea for months before our collaboration began, and that I had provided the fundamental business strategy and user experience framework that made the app successful. My parents were devastated when they learned about the lawsuit. They begged me to reconsider, arguing that family should always come first and that money was not worth destroying our relationship. My mother cried during every phone call, pleading with me to find a way to resolve the conflict without involving the courts. She worried that the legal battle would create permanent damage to our family dynamics and suggested that we try mediation instead. My father was more pragmatic, but equally concerned about the long-term consequences of the legal battle. He had worked in business for decades and understood the importance of protecting intellectual property, but he also feared that the lawsuit would tear our family apart. The family gatherings became increasingly uncomfortable as the legal proceedings dragged on. My parents tried to remain neutral, but it was clear that they were struggling to understand how their two sons had ended up in such a bitter conflict. Extended family members were confused about the situation and didn't know how to respond when the topic came up in conversation. Some relatives took sides, while others tried to avoid the subject entirely. Holiday celebrations were particularly difficult, with my brother and I carefully avoiding each other and everyone else walking on eggshells to prevent any confrontation. Despite their pleas, I knew I had to stand up for myself and protect my intellectual property. The principle of the matter was more important than maintaining false peace. I had worked too hard on the project to simply walk away and let my brother take credit for my ideas. The success of the app would be built on my original concept, my market research, and my business strategy. I felt that I had a responsibility to myself and to other entrepreneurs to fight against this kind of intellectual property theft, even if it meant sacrificing my relationship with my brother. During the discovery phase of the lawsuit, we uncovered evidence that my brother had been secretly working with investors for months. He had pitched the app concept to several venture capital firms, using my original business plan and market research as the foundation for his presentations. The investors had been impressed by the thoroughness of the proposal and had offered him significant funding to bring the product to market. What made the situation even more infuriating was that he had deliberately excluded me from these meetings, knowing that my involvement would complicate his narrative as the sole creator. The investor presentations were particularly damaging to my brother's credibility. He had presented himself as the mastermind behind the entire project, claiming that he had spent months developing the concept and conducting market research. However, the presentation materials contained large sections that were copied directly from my original business plan, including specific market analysis data, user personas, and competitive positioning strategies. The timeline of his investor meetings also contradicted his claims about when he had developed the concept, providing clear evidence that he had stolen my work and presented it as his own. We also discovered that my brother had registered a new business entity without my knowledge, using a slightly different name but the same core concept. He had transferred all the intellectual property rights to this new company and had begun building a team of employees who were unaware of my involvement in the original project. The new company had received substantial funding from investors who believed they were backing an innovative entrepreneur with a groundbreaking idea. The deception was comprehensive and clearly premeditated. The legal battle stretched on for over a year, consuming most of my time and energy. I had to take a leave of absence from my regular job to focus on the case, which put me under tremendous financial strain. My social life suffered as I became increasingly isolated and obsessed with winning the lawsuit. Friends grew tired of hearing about the ongoing conflict, and many began to distance themselves from the situation entirely. Dating became impossible because I was too consumed with the legal proceedings to maintain any meaningful relationships. I found myself checking legal updates obsessively, researching similar cases online, and constantly strategizing with my attorney about the next steps. I subscribed to legal databases, read court documents from similar intellectual property disputes, and even attended law school seminars about patent and trademark law. The stress was taking a toll on my physical and mental health, but I remained determined to see the case through to the end. I lost weight, had trouble sleeping, and developed anxiety symptoms that I had never experienced before. The financial burden of the lawsuit was overwhelming. Legal fees were accumulating rapidly, and I had to liquidate my savings account, sell my car, and even borrow money from friends to cover the costs. My attorney worked on a contingency basis for part of her fee, but the court costs, expert witness fees, and document discovery expenses were still substantial. I calculated that I had already spent more than $50,000 on the legal battle, with no guarantee of success. The financial pressure added another layer of stress to an already difficult situation. My brother's app launched successfully during the middle of our legal proceedings. The product received positive reviews from tech bloggers and quickly gained traction in the productivity software market. Industry publications featured articles about the innovative approach and the young entrepreneur who had created it. The app was downloaded over 1 million times in its first month, and user reviews were overwhelmingly positive. Watching him receive recognition and praise for what I considered to be my stolen idea was incredibly painful. The success of the app made the stakes of the lawsuit even higher. The company's valuation continued to increase with each passing month, and my brother was being courted by major technology companies for potential acquisition deals. He appeared on several podcasts and gave interviews about his entrepreneurial journey, always carefully avoiding any mention of our collaboration. The media attention was extensive, and he was being positioned as a rising star in the tech industry. I knew that if I lost the case, I would not only lose my idea but also miss out on the financial rewards that should have been mine. I watched from the sidelines as my brother hired additional employees, expanded the app's functionality, and secured partnerships with major corporations. The company was growing rapidly, and industry analysts were predicting that it would become a major player in the productivity software market. The success was built on my original concept, my market research, and my business strategy, but I was receiving no recognition or compensation for my contributions. The injustice of the situation was overwhelming, and I became even more determined to win the legal battle. The breakthrough in our case came when my lawyer discovered that my brother had made a critical error in his early investor presentations. He had accidentally included metadata in some of the digital files he shared, which clearly showed that the original documents had been created on my computer and under my user account. This technical evidence provided the smoking gun we needed to prove that he had taken my work and presented it as his own. The metadata included timestamps, revision histories, and computer identification information that definitively linked the documents to my personal computer. Additionally, we found email exchanges between my brother and his business partner, where they discussed strategies for minimizing my role in the project's development. In one particularly damaging email, my brother wrote about the need to rewrite the project's history to exclude my contributions and present himself as the sole creator. The emails also revealed that he had been planning to cut me out of the project for months, even while we were still working together and I believed we were equal partners. The evidence was overwhelming, and my lawyer was confident that we would prevail in court. The email evidence was particularly devastating because it showed premeditation and deliberate deception. My brother had written about the need to establish a clear narrative that positioned him as the innovative entrepreneur who had conceived and developed the app independently. He had even discussed specific strategies for handling questions about my involvement, including prepared responses that would minimize my contributions and emphasize his technical expertise. The emails revealed a calculated plan to steal my intellectual property and build a successful business on my ideas. The trial itself was emotionally draining but ultimately vindicating. The courthouse was crowded with reporters and industry observers who had been following the case. My brother took the stand and tried to downplay my contributions, claiming that I had only provided basic input while he had done the real work of developing the product. He testified that ideas were common and that execution was what mattered in business. However, the evidence spoke for itself, and the judge could clearly see through his attempts to rewrite history. Several witnesses testified on my behalf, including former colleagues who had heard me discussing the app concept months before my brother became involved. My college roommate provided particularly compelling testimony about the detailed conversations we had about the project and my excitement about the potential market opportunity. Friends and family members testified about my passion for the project and my extensive research into the productivity software market. The testimony painted a clear picture of my role as the original creator and visionary behind the app. The technical metadata evidence was particularly damaging to his case, as it definitively proved that the core business documents had originated from my computer. Expert witnesses explained how the metadata worked and demonstrated that the documents could not have been created on my brother's computer. The evidence was irrefutable and showed that my brother had been lying about his role in creating the original business plan and market research. After 3 days of testimony, the judge ruled decisively in my favor. The court awarded me 51% ownership of the company, effectively making me the majority shareholder and giving me control over all major business decisions. The judge's ruling was comprehensive and addressed every aspect of the intellectual property dispute. Additionally, my brother was ordered to pay my legal fees and provide financial compensation for the emotional distress and lost opportunities I had suffered. The judgment also included provisions for ongoing royalty payments and profit-sharing arrangements that would ensure I received fair compensation for my contributions. The judge's ruling was particularly satisfying because it validated everything I had been fighting for throughout the legal battle. The court recognized that I was the original creator of the app concept and that my brother had misappropriated my intellectual property for his own benefit. The ruling also acknowledged the extensive business planning and market research I had conducted, which had been essential to the app's success. The comprehensive nature of the judgment left no room for appeal, which meant that my brother would have to accept the new ownership structure or face additional legal consequences. The victory felt surreal after such a long and difficult battle. I had been preparing for this moment for over a year, but the reality of winning was almost overwhelming. The stress and anxiety that had consumed my life for months suddenly lifted, and I felt a sense of relief and vindication that I had never experienced before. The financial implications of the judgment were also significant, as I was now the majority owner of a rapidly growing technology company with substantial value and market potential. Taking over the business required me to make some difficult decisions about the future direction of the company. My brother was technically still an employee and minority shareholder, but our relationship had been irreparably damaged by the legal battle. The working environment would be impossible with both of us involved in daily operations. I decided to buy out his remaining shares and remove him from all operational roles within the company. This decision was not made out of spite, but rather from a practical understanding that we could no longer work together effectively. The buyout process was handled through our attorneys to avoid any direct confrontation. I offered him a fair market value for his remaining shares, which provided him with substantial financial compensation despite losing control of the company. He accepted the buyout offer without negotiation, perhaps recognizing that continuing to work together would be impossible given the circumstances. The transaction was completed within 30 days, and I became the sole owner of the company that had originally been built on my ideas and vision. The company needed strong leadership and a clear vision moving forward. I hired a new management team, including a chief technology officer who could oversee the technical aspects of the business and a chief marketing officer who could expand our market reach. I also brought in experienced business advisors who could help navigate the challenges of running a rapidly growing technology company. The transition was challenging, but I was determined to prove that I could successfully lead the company and honor the original concept that had started this entire journey. The app continued to grow under my leadership, eventually becoming one of the most popular productivity tools in its category. We added new features based on user feedback, expanded into different markets, and built partnerships with major technology companies. The user base grew to over 10 million active users, and the company's revenue increased dramatically. We also launched additional products that complemented the original app, creating a comprehensive productivity suite that addressed various aspects of time management and organization. I hired a talented team of developers and marketing professionals who shared my vision for the product's future. The company culture was built on innovation, collaboration, and respect for intellectual property. We implemented strict policies to protect our own intellectual property and to ensure that all employees understood the importance of giving credit where it was due. The team was passionate about the mission and committed to creating products that would genuinely improve people's lives. The financial success exceeded even my most optimistic projections. The company was valued at over $50 million within 2 years of my taking control, and we received acquisition offers from several major technology companies. I was able to achieve the financial freedom I had dreamed of when I first conceived the idea, but more importantly, I had built something meaningful that was helping millions of people become more productive and organized in their daily lives. We expanded internationally, launching the app in over 20 countries and supporting multiple languages. The global market response was overwhelmingly positive, and we quickly established ourselves as a leading player in the international productivity software market. The success validated my original vision and proved that the concept had universal appeal across different cultures and markets. The company's growth trajectory continued to accelerate, and industry analysts were predicting even greater success in the future. Looking back on the experience, I realized that the lawsuit was about more than just money or business ownership. It was about standing up for myself, protecting my ideas, and refusing to let someone else take credit for my work. The legal battle taught me valuable lessons about trust, documentation, and the importance of protecting intellectual property from the very beginning of any collaborative project. I learned that even family members can betray your trust when significant financial opportunities are involved. The experience also taught me about the importance of having proper legal documentation for any business partnership. I now insist on formal contracts, clear equity agreements, and comprehensive intellectual property protections for all my business ventures. I have become an advocate for entrepreneurs who face similar challenges, and I regularly speak at business conferences about the importance of protecting intellectual property. The lessons I learned during this difficult period have made me a better entrepreneur and business leader. While I lost my relationship with my brother, I gained something far more valuable: the confidence to pursue my dreams and the knowledge that I have the strength to overcome even the most challenging obstacles. The success of the app serves as a constant reminder that sometimes the most difficult paths lead to the most rewarding destinations. I have no regrets about pursuing the lawsuit, even though it came at great personal cost. The principle of protecting intellectual property and standing up for what is right was more important than maintaining a relationship built on deception and betrayal. The impact of the legal battle extended beyond just my immediate family. The case received significant media attention in the tech industry and became a cautionary tale about the importance of protecting intellectual property in collaborative projects. Law schools began using the case as a teaching example in their intellectual property courses, and business schools incorporated it into their entrepreneurship programs. The case helped establish important legal precedents for intellectual property disputes involving family members and business partners. Today, the company continues to thrive under my leadership, and I am proud of what we have accomplished. The app has helped millions of people improve their productivity and achieve their goals, which was always the original vision behind the project. The financial success has allowed me to pursue other entrepreneurial ventures and to give back to the community through various charitable initiatives. The journey was difficult and painful, but it ultimately led to personal and professional growth that I never could have achieved otherwise. The relationship with my parents has gradually improved over time, though things will never be quite the same. They have come to understand that I had no choice but to protect my intellectual property, and that my brother's actions left me with no alternative but to pursue legal action. The family dynamics have shifted, and we have all learned to navigate the new reality of our relationships. While the immediate family will always be affected by what happened, we have found ways to move forward and maintain some level of connection despite the circumstances. The success of the lawsuit and the subsequent growth of the company have opened new opportunities that I never could have imagined. I have been invited to speak at major industry conferences, serve on advisory boards for startup companies, and mentor young entrepreneurs who are facing similar challenges. The experience has given me a unique perspective on business, law, and family relationships that I am able to share with others who might benefit from the lessons I learned during this difficult period. The most important lesson I learned is that protecting your intellectual property is not just about money or business success, but about maintaining your integrity and standing up for what is right. The decision to pursue the lawsuit was ultimately about refusing to let someone else steal credit for my work and ideas. While the financial rewards were significant, the personal satisfaction of being vindicated and recognized as the true creator of the app was even more valuable. The experience taught me that sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in, even when the cost is high and the outcome is uncertain.